We got 5 seconds.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Modern Mompreneur podcast. I am your host, Dai Smith, the Modern Mompreneur, and I have a wonderful guest today who is a fellow mompreneur, Miss Colie James. She is amazing. Her and I met, online we met a few months ago, but we actually saw each other in real life at the Make Your Mark Live conference hosted by Jordan Gill, which was amazing in Dallas.
Amazing.
And before we met, I was kind of like crushing on Cole, like, how do you do this? How is this working for you? She's the one who introduced me to this platform that we're using, Riverside, among other things. I would say she's like my IG bestie in a way, right? We kind of have the same things going on in life. And so so let me tell you a little bit about her and then we'll dive into getting to know her a little bit more. Okay. So Colie James is the Disney loving family filmmaker and workflow automations guru. Yes, she is. And the host of the Business First Creatives podcast. Based in Denver, Colorado, her heart pumps in helping photographers and creatives service providers automate their shit, okay? And reclaim their time and get back to living. She believes that if it doesn't bring you joy, automate that shit. With 10 plus years in the creative space, Colie believes that every creative deserves a business that is sustainable and profitable, okay? And no one should quit their 9 to 5 only to work 24/7 in their
No,
business.
ma'am.
Lord help us. The truth, automated system, this is the truth. The automated system can save us all from being overworked and overwhelmed because ain't nobody got time for that. When Colie isn't building killer workflows and automations, you can find her spending much needed time with her husband, James, her daughter, Chloe, or you guessed it, at Disneyland. So welcome, Colie, to the show, to the Modern Mompreneur Show. Thank you for being a guest, girlfriend.
Thank you, Dai. I'm so excited to be here and chat with you, even if it is 7 a.m. my time.
Y'all, she is really, she cares for the Modern Mompreneur community because she is up early in the morning in Denver, looking fresh faced as ever. The light is
Thank you.
hitting you just right. Yes, I'm hoping y'all getting some snow since it is at this time recording, getting into the winter time. So December 1st. So absolutely. So let's get into it. Tell us about, your journey, and you're a mom, you are a successful business owner. How you balance all the things or harmonize that life?
Yeah, I mean, so in a previous life, I was an academic. I was a professor for 10 years. And then we moved to the state of Colorado, where there was just not a lot of opportunity for me to find a new job in higher education. And so at that point, I was desperately trying to become a mom. We had been married for 7 years and we were still on like the fertility parenting track. We were trying to have a baby. And so when we moved here, I said, you know what? I'm just going to take some time off. I am going to be like a stay-at-home wife until I'm a stay-at-home mom just for a hot minute, because I was definitely like that person that you see in the dictionary for overworked and overwhelmed. That was me. That was definitely me in my 20s. So we moved here, and within the first year, we had bought a house and we were pregnant. Which was great. I mean, there was some fertility issues in there, but within the first 13 months, we were, where we wanted to be. And after I had my daughter, Chloe, it was pretty clear to us, because of some of the fertility issues that we had, that she was going to be our only child. And so when it came to like getting back into the workforce, I was like, no, yeah, I'm not about that life. So I stayed home with her for 3 years. For 3 years, she was with me. I did some part-time nannying for a hot minute, but when we put her in preschool at 3, I was like, okay, what do I do with my life now? Like, I've been at home so long. I have absolutely no interest in returning to a higher education classroom. So what do I do? And I had looked at becoming a real estate agent, which is a little funny. I mean, I like people. I like looking at real estate. It seemed like it would be a good fit. But what I came to at the end was building my own photography business. And so I opened my photography business in 2012. And just, I dove in, but I really did it to where I was growing my business as I got more time. So when Chloe first went to preschool, she was only going 2 mornings a week for 3 hours each day. That is not a lot of time to work
No.
on a business, build a business. I mean, none of that. So definitely in the beginning, I was not taking a ton of clients, but what I was doing was really working on the back end. I am one of those people that like from the moment that I opened my business, I had profitable and sustainable prices. So like no $50 shoots for me. I went from $0 for my portfolio sessions to 700 the first year was what I was charging for my family sessions. And of course, you know, my prices increased as I saw fit every time I
Yeah,
wanted to.
yeah.
But like that's how I went from my previous career and then transitioned into motherhood and then eventually became an entrepreneur opening my own business.
Got it. Got it. And so, wow, that's you definitely dove right into the creative space. Having been in academics, that's not a it can be a creative space, but how did that was that something that you wanted to do to be a photographer, or why did you choose that
No.
among all the things? And then
No.
skill set to be able to do it, because in order to charge what you want to charge and deliver, and yeah, how did that come about? Where'd that
So
come
the
from?
funny thing is, what I taught when I was a college professor was math and statistics. So
Oh
definitely
my God.
nothing related to business. Now, my minor in college was business administration. So I did take a lot of accounting classes, a lot of marketing classes, a lot of business management classes. But I didn't really take those classes thinking that I was ever going to open a business. Like in the household that I grew up in, my mother was a college professor, my stepfather was a college professor, both in math, in case you wondered, which is how I became a math professor. But like entrepreneurship is not something that I was ever introduced to as a child. So, especially when I was younger, like I was never the kid that had a lemonade stand. And I was also never the kid that went door to door selling, you know, the items to raise money for bands. Like my
Mhm.
mom didn't want us doing any of those kinds of activities. So I had no entrepreneurial experience, like even as a kid trying to like,
Yeah,
you know, hustle and make money on the side.
yeah.
The photography came because I mean, you have children. As we do, when our children come, we are like, oh my gosh, like they are here. I want to learn how to take better photos of them. I
Mhm.
actually always loved photography. In high school, I was always the kid that had a camera in my hand. But it wasn't until I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, you know, now that my kid was going to be in preschool. And I was like, I told my husband, you know what? I really think I can make this a business. I mean, I was spending a lot of money on classes and cameras before I knew that I wanted to make it a business. And I'm sure my
Okay.
husband was like, does this have an end in sight? Like, what are you
Yeah.
planning on doing with this very expensive hobby? And so I was like, I think I just want to give it a try for business. So, like, for 1 year, I soaked
Mm,
up every business course that I found online related to photography. I was, you know, improving my actual creative skills, learning to take better pictures. And so by the time I actually opened my business in 2012, I had a portfolio that I was proud of. And I knew that by running the numbers, because hello, I'm a math person, I knew by
yeah.
running the numbers that I was in a position to make at least the same amount of money hourly as my husband. So I'm very clear when I, you know, give interviews like this. My goal was never to replace my initial income. That just wouldn't have been possible with the capacity that I had at that point in life because my last few years of working like outside of the home, I made six figures. And so when I
Mhm.
opened this photography business, I was like, no, I'm not trying to be a six-figure photographer. Like I'm just trying to make sure that at the end of the day, when I calculate how much money I'm making per hour, it's at least as much as my biochemist husband who is leaving the house every day and working a 9 to 5, 40 hours a
Mhm.
week.
Wow. I love that part. I love that you were so strategic with it, because you took that year to like study your craft and really learn the
Mhm.
business, right? Like whatever it is, real estate, whatever it is, productivity, you actually are learning, you have the space to do it. And you ran the numbers. So many of us as women, hello, are not as proactive when it comes to the finances, and really mapping out the forecasting. Like, I know how much I need to make. And your goal wasn't to be a six-figure entrepreneur at the time, but
Mhm.
definitely just to match your husband's income, which, or your partner's
Yeah.
income, which I love. Very, very smart. I love that. Um, what about now? What are you doing now? Because I know you
So,
are all about workflows and
yes.
automation. Transition to
So
that.
I have shifted my business quite a bit. So the funny thing is when I tell people like from grad school or people that knew me as like Professor Johnson, when I tell them that I opened a photography business, I would get a lot of laughs. Like people were like, I don't understand. Like you did all of that work to like become a professor and now you take photos for a living, like make it make sense. And the truth is, initially, it didn't make sense to me either. Like, I don't really think that I ever considered myself to be a hugely creative person. Now, as you mentioned, I am an extremely strategic person. So it didn't take very long in my first year of business before I realized I was embarking on like this journey that most photographers weren't doing. As you said, you know, I opened my business full prices, no like $200, $50 sessions over here. And so I realized very quickly because I do in-home sessions, I don't take portraits outside, which is what people traditionally think of when they think of family portraiture. So those aren't
Yeah.
the pictures that I was taking. And a lot of people were like, okay, Coley, I love what you're doing, but like, how can I learn to take better photos of families inside their houses? So within the first year, I created my first online course. So I went from, you know, being a stay at home mom, building my business in a year, and then at 11 months into my business I already had my first online course. And so when I started telling people from like my academic world, oh, you know, I'm a photographer but I also teach photographers how to make better pictures and how to create their own business, oh, that made way more sense to everyone who knew me before I was an entrepreneur. They're like, oh, you're teaching, oh, that makes so much sense. So
Yes.
how I ended up progressing into the systems world was from the beginning, I was teaching that course. Used to be called the business of telling stories. So it was half creativity and half business. And I
Okay.
realized very quickly that the way to succeed in business is to have systems. And so I was kind of teaching my own systems inside of that course in a very, very small way. And then when I moved into more one to one mentoring or business coaching, I was helping those photographers set up full systems in their business as part of their mentoring and coaching. And then
Mhm.
in July of 2020, my bestie, Anami Tonkin, I feel like she gave me the best present that anyone could ever give me. I was a guest on her podcast, and it was my very first episode being a guest. And she invited me on as like a CRM expert to talk to her audience, which is mostly photographers, about how to build sustainable systems in your business using a CRM. We recorded that episode. And when we stopped, I was like, okay, this is my next course. This is my next business endeavor. So within 2 months, I had started the process of creating a blueprint on how to run your business inside of Dubsado for photographers. And by the end of that year, so remember, the episode aired on my birthday in July. By Black Friday, I had already pre-sold the beta course. I had 11 people who initially, you know, said yes and raised their hand. And I said,
Yeah.
okay, thanks. You're going to get the course in January. Well, between Black Friday and January, I had a lot of people in my DMs that were like, hey, Coley, like, do you set up systems? Could you do this for me? And I was like, oh my God, yes. It had never occurred to me to set people's systems up as like a business. Again, former professor. I was like, I'm going to create a course to teach you how to do it.
Yeah.
But a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
people were like, can you just do it
You
for me? So
right?
honestly, in January of 2021, not only did I launch the CRM Blueprint in its original form, which was just for Dubsado users for photographers, at the same time, I launched my services to set up your systems for you. And so that's what I've been doing as the majority of my business since 2021. In 2021, I was still 50% systems, 50% photography. But at the
Okay.
end of 2022, I made the decision to stop accepting new photography clients. So I am still a photographer, I am still a filmmaker, but I am mostly servicing the clients that I've had for like the last 10 years. I'm not actively trying to build a bigger audience of buyers for my photography services.
Got it. Got it. I love that. I love that evolution because it's still teaching, it's still fitting that into it, but also now you see a need for the done for you, which is a
Mhm.
lot of times if you're at a certain level and you're busy, you don't have no interest or time to do it. You want someone else to do it and do it correctly. Even those who can do it. I know for me, I reached out to you about website. I could do it, but I don't want to. I
I'm
could
a
build up Shadow. I know how to do it, but I don't want to. I don't have time to do that. So that's definitely a need, depending on what you want to do. So love that.
Well, I've
Love
always
that.
been a big believer in outsourcing, even before I started setting up systems for people. And the funny thing is, I'm definitely a type A person. For a very long time, I had a very hard time outsourcing anything in my business. And then
Mhm.
in 2016, I mean, not to go off on a tangent, but I completely lost my vision for 6 weeks. For 6 weeks, I couldn't see. And as a photographer, like, what do you do when you can't see? Like, I couldn't do the sessions that were on my books. I couldn't edit the ones that were on my computer. I was forced to ask for help. So I did that in
Mm,
2 ways. Number one, I hired an editor, and it happened to be one of my previous students from my course. So she
okay.
knew like what the end result should be from these photos. So she quickly jumped in and edited the sessions that were on my computer that I was unable to do because I couldn't see. And then I had a few Fresh 48 clients, which is when you go into the hospital and you photograph right after they have the baby, not the birth,
Mm,
but like within 48 hours after birth. So I had a fellow photographer who was actually a friend locally, and she is actually who I was hiring at that point in time to photograph my own family. She's also documentary. She had never done a Fresh 48 though, but she came into the hospital with me and she did like 80% of the photography. And I
mm.
just did the video clips that I was going to need to do their film. Like I could barely see. I had one eye closed. If I focused really hard, I could kind of see the things in the camera. But
Did that.
I know it was a ridiculous day. But at that point, once my friend Piper edited those sessions for me and gave them back, I was like, oh, I really can outsource my editing to someone else and get it back the way that it needs to be. And so that was like a complete game changer for me. After that point, I was outsourcing my editing. And then
Yeah.
as my business grew on the system side, I mean, now I do have a team. I have a podcast manager who manages my podcast. I have a virtual assistant who helps me not only with like social media tasks and those kind of things. She is actually qualified enough to do things in the systems while I am
Mm,
setting up people's Dubsado and Honeybook accounts. So I
okay.
hired both of them in the same month in September of 2022. No, September of 2021. No, 2022, which is just,
Okay.
it's crazy to think about the fact that I didn't really have help before then, but I love
Yeah.
outsourcing. If
A
there's
long
things that you don't
time.
want to do in your business,
Yeah. Say it again. I'm sorry. The things you don't want to do in your business,
yes.
hire
The
somebody
things that you
else.
don't want
So
to do in your business, hire somebody else.
yes, yes. Or automate that shit, as you said. Figure
Yes,
out
ma'am.
how to use a system to do it. That's a really important lesson for mompreneurs because I feel like a lot of us do have that type A perfectionism quality. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with perfectionism. I'm here to dispel that. It's just whether or not you do it in a healthy, adaptive way or a maladaptive way, right? But you want to have control over all of the things. And any CEO knows that you have to delegate. You have to empower others to be able to do that. I mean, you gave Piper an opportunity to be doing a first 48. Maybe she's doing those now. You gave your
Mhm.
editor, a student of yours, an opportunity to edit for you and empowered her as well. The same way you've done it with your VA and your podcast manager. And that's freed up time for you to be the CEO and continue to build your business. So it's okay to do it at first, kind of like you've done and I've done at the first few years, doing it yourself and figuring it out. But at some point to scale and grow, you have to either get people or systems in place or both in order to
Mhm.
really take your business to where it wants to go. So yeah,
And I
love
just
that.
want to add, I feel like sometimes I use that language, the same language that you just used. When you are ready to scale your business, you should think about outsourcing, you should think about delegating. But for myself, a lot of the outsourcing and the delegation that I've done in the last 2 years wasn't necessarily to scale my business, even though I did scale it to six figures and all of that good jazz. But for me, it was about spending more time with my kid because one of the results of the pandemic was that I ended up homeschooling her for a year. And then the 2 years before that, she was actually virtually schooling. So, like, in what pandemic years, March 2020, Chloe came home from school, as they all did, and I didn't actually send her back to school until this year. Like this year in
Mm,
August of 2023 is when she finally went back to school. So for me, a big part of the outsourcing and the delegation in the last 2 years has been so that I could be more present for
mm,
her in terms of homeschooling and, monitoring her virtual schooling, if you will. And so mompreneurs, like I just want to put this out there, perfectly great to scale. But when people come to me and they need help with systems, I tell you, I'm going to give you time back in your business to do whatever you want to do. If that's
mm.
scaling your business, if that's marketing to get more clients, great. I'm happy for you. But also on the flip side, if you just want to spend more time with your family or,
Yeah.
get a personal hobby or whatever it is that you want to do with your time, I do not judge. I just want you to have the time to make that decision for yourself.
I love that. I love that is spot on speaking to me and our audience because you're absolutely right. Many of us have transitioned from that hustle corporate job to owning our business, and a lot of times it is so we can be with our families more. So we're not fighting traffic every day, going into an office, having to travel, being consumed. But we, as entrepreneurs, if you build it the right way, you have tons more flexibility and autonomy to do the things you want to do. So I feel like that's a good transition for us to kind of move into your momming part, the mompreneur part of who
Sure.
you are and what you do. So having all of these transitions from starting a business in the midst of sending your 3-year-old off to school and then building a business in the pandemic, homeschooling, Chloe, what has been some aha moments for you? And you may have just mentioned one, but outside of that, that has helped you to have a different perspective or kind of shaped your perspective on being a mompreneur and being present for your daughter.
I mean, I think that it was just the way that I built my business. I didn't have to learn those hard lessons of working in your business all the time and then trying to scale back. I think that's what happens with a lot of mompreneurs. Like they hustle so hard in the beginning because they think that they have to, that they actually overwork themselves in the beginning. And then it's about scaling back and making sure that you're giving time back to your family instead of like growing your business in a sustainable way with the time and the capacity that you have in each season of your life. I feel like if I could just grab those young entrepreneurs and like shake them and give them advice, it would be, make sure that you know your capacity at every season of your life. Because
Mm,
especially those of us who are mompreneurs and have children, I often get asked the question, well, Coley, how did you grow your business so quickly in the beginning? I'm like, well, I didn't grow my business so quickly in the beginning and I didn't do it all. And I did it. I increased my business as the time and capacity that I had increased as Chloe went to school more and more. So, like that
mm,
first year, it was only 2 days a week, 3 hours a day. The second year, she was there 3 full days a week. So, I mean, the amount of work that I took her first year of preschool versus her second year of preschool was astronomically higher. I mean, that
yeah.
was when my Fresh 48s really blew up because I did have a lot of time in order to be able to do these things. And I will just give a shout out to my husband because while he hasn't always had like the most flexible job, I was really lucky in that in the first few years of my business, my husband was still doing a postdoc at University of Colorado. And so when I was booking these Fresh 48, even before Chloe went to school, like if I had a client who delivered, I would just call James up and be like, okay, listen, tomorrow I'm going to have a Fresh 48. I'm going to have to be out of the house from, 9 to 11. I need you to be home, with Chloe and all these things because we don't have any family here. And
Mhm.
so not only did I only try to book at the capacity that I had, I was also not shy about leaning in and asking my husband for what I needed from him because
Yeah.
he actually had like that flexibility in his work schedule to be able to make it work. I mean, even when he left his postdoc and actually got a job in a biotech firm, he still had
Mhm.
quite a bit of like flexibility in order to
Okay.
come home like with 24 hours notice so that he could be home with Chloe if needed while I had to go out and do photography sessions.
Got it. Love it. I love it. So you build and allow time based on your lifestyle. It wasn't
Hmm.
like I'm gonna do this no matter what. So I know I often have guests who are on two ends. That one, they had this hustle business and they had a baby and things changed, right?
Yes,
Or I've had the ones who have these kids and life is life and like me, and then you start a business and you kind of
that's me.
figure out Where to, right? Where to put those in the where to put your business in the crevices of mothering and working and being a wife and all of that. What advice would you give to folks who are on that side, who are having to adjust and to their and let their business grow, right? Because you still need to
Mhm.
nurture that so that it can be sustainable. Like how would what would you tell them that are trying to figure that out right now so they can be profitable, right? And continue to grow.
So first, don't compare your business to others. I feel like when I am working with photographers that are early in their business, they are basically doing what they came to me for. They're like, "Okay, Coley, but like this person just sold out all their mini sessions." And I'm like, "Yeah, but all her children are in school." Like she has 5 full days a week, 7 hours a day to work on her business. Do you have that? And most of them are like, no. So, number one, don't compare your business to others. Number two, I think the best advice that I ever gave people was that you need to hire a babysitter. And it doesn't need to be that you need a babysitter in your house every day of the week. But like if you can find one full day dedicated to work on your business when you know that you have childcare lined up, or if you work better in shorter periods, like having 2 afternoons. Um, I know that for a lot of the photographers that I coached in the beginning, the biggest thing that I did for them was showing them the value of paying a babysitter $20 an hour. Like I would literally sit on a call and I would do the math for them. Okay, but listen, hear me out. If you hire this person for 3 hours, that's $20 an hour, it's $60.
Yeah.
These are all of the things in your business that you will be able to do with those 3 hours. And I mean, we would look at doing your marketing. Okay, if 3 hours of marketing, how many clients do you think that will yield you? Editing your photos, 3 hours. I mean, you could outsource it. Does it make sense to outsource now? Or does it make sense for you to do it? I mean, so the value of outsourcing, whether that is childcare or it's outsourcing other parts of your business, I mean, I don't want to run around with my sign that, you got to spend money to make money, even though I 100% believe that. But when
Mm-hmm.
you are a mompreneur and you are trying to fit a business into your life, I do think that we all have to sit down and do the hard math. And sometimes it just makes more sense to pay someone to do it if that is going to yield you more time to do money making activities like working directly with your clients.
Love that. Love that. Going back to that, relinquishing that control, not just from the business, but from the mothering. And it's okay to do that, especially when you think about the math. Like, what is that? Freeing up your time, freeing up the guilt that you feel like you have to be there and doing all of the things. Um, so I think that's great advice for the mompreneurs. And the fact that you can look at the cost benefit analysis too, right? Like it's going to save you
Yes.
money at the end. Love that. Good deal. So now we're going to transition to my favorite part of the podcast. And that is the lightning round. We're going to get all in your
Okay.
business. Okay. Learn a little bit more about you. So I'm going to ask you 6 questions, and the first thing that comes to your mind, just spit it off. There's no wrong answers. And you're going to learn a little bit more about you. All right.
Okay.
Okay. So first question: what are 3 words to describe you?
Oh, fun, strategic, authoritative.
Authoritative. All right, girl. What would you tell your 18-year-old self today?
Wow. I mean, I don't know how old the people you have on this podcast, but I barely remember being 18. I think that I would tell myself that you don't have to work so hard to build your career, because I do feel like when I was 18, I mean, I became a college professor for the first time when I was 21. I was the definition of a hustler in my entire 20s. And
You the
so
same
by the
age
time my
as
20s, yeah, by the time my 20s ended, I was exhausted. I was ready for motherhood. Motherhood seemed like a break from the life that I had in my 20s, which tells you something. So I would just say, you don't have to hustle so hard. You have
Mm,
time to get where
mm,
you need to go.
love that. What does it mean to you to be a modern mompreneur?
I mean, I just think that we can build the businesses that we want and that we don't have to take advice from like those gurus that we think have it all together. Like, what do they say? Bro marketing. I mean, I have built my business the entire time the way that I wanted to build it. And so that is what I think being a modern mompreneur is all about. We don't have to do and take advice from, our moms or how people did it before. You are able to create and blaze your own path in entrepreneurship, because at the end of the day, that is the biggest value of being an entrepreneur, is being able to do what you want when you want. Like, you are the boss. You get to make the decisions.
Hmm. Love it. Love it. I'll switch this question up a little bit and say, what do you love about being a mom? And what do you think Chloe thinks of you as a mompreneur?
So the funny thing is, being a STEM person, so my husband's a biochemist. I was a statistician, a mathematician before I opened this business. But my daughter is extremely creative. She loves dancing. She loves art. I foresee that she is going to be a creative entrepreneur in some way when she is, old enough to have her own boss. So I really hope that my daughter has figured out, through the amounts of time that I spend with her, taking her to Disney every month, just being home and being present, that not everyone's path is to go to college and get a college degree and end up working in someone else's business. I hope that the one thing that me being an entrepreneur has taught my daughter is that if she has a dream and it's creative, there are ways to make money from it. You do not have to get a job that you do not love and stay stuck there if that's not your dream. So I really hope that's what my daughter gets. And I also love that just in my household, she gets to see both parts. Like, she doesn't know me as a professor before, but she sees my husband as a biochemist using his PhD in, biochemistry every day. So she gets both sides of the coin. Someone who makes their living from home, working with people in a creative fashion, and she gets someone who uses his actual degree every day when he goes to work. So I love that my daughter is in a position to see both sides every single day.
Love that. Love that. What are you reading, watching, and or listening to right now?
Oh man. Okay, so I'm going to give you a TV show, because ever since I lost my vision, I actually don't waste my eyes on reading. It's a thing.
Okay.
So I am watching For All Mankind. It is a show on Apple TV, because I am a big history buff. Like, in high school, even though I took a STEM path in math and statistics, like, my favorite subject in high school was history. And so I just love that show because it flips it. Like, what if the Russians beat us to the moon? And the entire show is just a little bit different than reality, based on the fact that the Russians beat us to the moon in that show. So that is like my absolute favorite show. If you are not watching it on Apple TV and you have any interest in science fiction or history, it is the best.
Okay. What is the name of it again?
For All Mankind.
For All Mankind. That makes sense. Okay. Got it. Got it. Um, Last question. What is bringing you joy right now in your downtime?
Disneyland. Although, Day, I haven't been in months, and by the time I go in January, it's actually going to be the longest amount of time since I've gone. But like, on periods of time like this where I haven't actually been to Disneyland, I am planning my next Disney vacation, and so that brings me joy. I mean, I say that jokingly, but also I feel like during the pandemic, Disneyland was like my therapy. It was also like what I did as my goal to scale my business. Like, one of the goals that I had in 2021 after I bought my annual pass was, how much more money do I have to make in order to go to Disney every month and feel guilt free? Because I mean, that's plane tickets, that's hotel rooms. I mean, so that was my goal. And it made me happy. So it continues to make me happy.
I love it. I love it. I haven't been there since I was a 5 year, 6 year old, so I gotta I gotta ask you because you got all the hookups, probably what to do, where to stay, all the things.
Listen, anyone in this listening audience, if you need tips. Now, I will say I'm Disneyland, not Disney World. I can still give
Yeah,
you
yeah,
tips on
yeah.
Disney World, but I am willing to share everything and anything that I know about Disneyland for anyone, planning a
Yeah,
trip to California.
love it. So you got the hookup. You got workflow automation. You got photography and creative filmmaking, and then you got Disney expert over here, help Disneyland to help you figure out what to do. Because I do think we do need a guide when you embark on these Disney trips. It's
Hmm.
overwhelming. So yes. Well, thank you for sharing in the lightning round. Love, love, love everything that you're doing. You're such an inspiration because you are living that life first business. I mean, your daughter Chloe is so blessed to have you, showing her how to really tap into her creative ability because you're living that life and you're encouraging her. And then you and your husband are a great example of a dynamic duo, supporting one another, seeing the value in what you're doing. So many times I talk to moms and wives who don't have that as a part of their reality, and that's
Hmm.
so hard. But you're doing it. And if anyone is listening and wants to, follow Chloe on her journey, Collie on her journey, make sure that you follow her because she is, first of all, hella entertaining. Okay, on the gram, super, super helpful and just engaging. She knows her shit, as you know, workflow automation, creative things. And so I want to just give you an opportunity to share with the audience on how they can contact you and stay in touch.
All right. So, guys, the website's really easy. It is coliejames.com, and Day is going to have that in the show notes. And
Yes,
as she
ma'am.
said, I am super entertaining when I show up on Instagram. Like my reels and my stories, I keep it real, y'all. That's the one thing that you will learn about me. And so on Instagram, I am also at Colie James.
Got it. Yeah. So follow her on the gram, visit her website, find out everything she has going on. Listen to her on the podcast as
Yes.
well.
I can't believe I didn't
This
say
is
that. Business
it
First
is
Creatives is my podcast.
So listen here, jump on over there, subscribe, and make sure that you are staying in tune. And she has some amazing guests on her show as well, so you can learn all of the things. But thank you, ladies and gents, for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I implore you to share it with another mompreneur. Right? Let her get in on this. Boss girl magic here, boss mom magic, and be
Hmm.
inspired by Collie's story and share it with someone, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, connect with Collie, all of the things. And one thing before we go, as we always do, I want to just encourage you all to continue to give yourself permission to live the life that you want to live. And with that, until next time, you guys be blessed. And thank you for listening to the Modern Mompreneur Podcast.